Hello, everybody out there in radio or internet land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org here on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. As always, following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. If you're just tuning in, this is our weekly news program. We tell y'all what's going on here in the city of Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so-called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective, breaking down kind of media misinformation as well as capitalist BS and the rest. So we're going to jump right in on today's show. I wanted to start with an update about the ongoing contract negotiations between the Western Michigan University administration and the American Association of University Professors Union. And this is a really important update. It was just posted last Friday, and we're looking at some inter union solidarity coming up against the administration. So this was posted on WMU AAUP's website as of last Friday. Headline with this one is Three Western Michigan University unions issue historic joint no confidence resolution. In a dramatic expression of long-term dissatisfaction and concern, all three of Western Michigan University's academic labor unions, the WMTAU, that's for teaching assistants, the WMU PIO, that's part-time instructors, and the WMU AAUP, that's board-appointed faculty, all members of the AFT have voted no confidence in WMU President Montgomery. The resolution cites numerous failures to responsibly steward the university, including insufficient investment in teaching assistants, professors, and instructors, anti-union tactics, and indifference to long-standing employee concerns. Western needs to turn things around quickly to become a great place to learn and work, and we're trying to focus attention on that, said PIO President Tom Bober. It's a point echoed by TAU President Thomas Fisher. The university is at a crossroads. It has to decide if it's going to keep chasing away instructors and students or start investing in them again. While the violations identified in the resolution are long-standing, the timing of this vote amid protracted, controversial salary negotiations between WMU and the faculty is not an accident. The university is going through the motions of negotiating raises right now, but it's clear that they're trying to force us into accepting a low offer, explained WMU AAUP President Catherine Bailey. Although the administration is contractually obligated to continue to negotiate past the lapsed August 30th deadline, they are stonewalling and foot dragging, she said, adding that the low compensation offer is symptomatic of the administration's ongoing long-term disinvestment in academics. The no confidence resolution comes amid numerous other WMU AAUP labor actions, including various demonstrations and ongoing consideration of a faculty strike. That the administration is bending over backwards to try to force the faculty to accept the lowest raise it thinks it can get away with, at the same time it crows about enrollment, increasingly shows the value it places on faculty, Bailey said. There is another interesting aspect of the timing surrounding the no confidence resolution, according to the WMU three academic labor presidents. When these three labor leaders agreed to ask their members to participate in a vote of no confidence in the university's president, they did so, they said, fully expecting the administration to try to minimize the action. So when WMU President Montgomery announced last week, on the same morning the vote was to be sent to many members, his plan to retire next June, we laughed, said Fisher. He added that the administration knew this vote was coming, and rather than just actually acknowledge and address the problems, once again, they're looking for a way to avoid them. Bober agreed, explaining the administration would love nothing more than to distract people from the really serious problems the resolution identifies by pretending that this is all about one guy, i.e., President Montgomery. And while these three labor presidents agree that President Montgomery has been instrumental in developing and implementing the university's failed practices and policies, he is merely a symbol of the leadership's failure as a whole, according to Bailey, Bover, and Fisher. To underscore the point, Bailey noted that the number of her colleagues suggested that the no confidence resolution focus on WMU's Board of Trustees rather than President Montgomery, since they are responsible for overseeing the WMU president. And in fact, the role of the Board of Trustees is a sore spot for many of WMU's academic employees, given that they have consistently continued to authorize compensation increases for Montgomery during the past 7 years and also to publicly praise his performance. In fact, just one day after Western's faculty overwhelmingly voted no confidence in Montgomery in 2021, the board approved a $75,000 bonus for him. If the board has been paying any attention at all to our concerns, we have no evidence for it, says Bover. He added that all we ever hear from them is what a great job the administration is doing. Fisher agreed, noting that the no confidence resolution should serve as a roadmap for any future WMU administrators the board chooses to hire and empower. Regardless of the fact that he's retiring, we expect the board to make sure Montgomery spends every single day of his 9 remaining months fixing the problems identified in this resolution and use it as a standard for future presidents to uphold, Fisher said. And just to read the full text, this is the no confidence resolution that the various unions passed on September 20th. Be it resolved that Western Michigan University's three academic unions stand united in expressing that our memberships, separately and combined, have no confidence in President Edward Montgomery. The WMU Professional Instructors Organization, the WMU Teaching Assistants Union, and the WMU American Association of University Professors issue this resolution for reasons including, but not limited to, the following: a failure to responsibly steward WMU's core academic mission, as evidenced in part by chronically insufficient investment in teaching assistants, professors, and instructors. A failure to responsibly administer academic labor relations, as evidenced in part by the president's use of aggressively anti-union law firms, his failure to appoint an appropriate director of academic labor relations director, and an unacceptable number of contractual and labor law violations by WMU, which has led to grievances, arbitrations, and unfair labor practice complaints. And a chronic failure to be responsive to reasonable employee concerns that have long suggested a crisis of morale at WMU, resulting in premature resignations and retirements, job dissatisfaction, and an inability to attract and retain new employees. So if you want to read that for yourself, that's at thewmuaaup.com. It's their functional digital newsletter. Headline that: three Western Michigan University unions issue historic joint no confidence resolution. So I also wanted to point out there is some activity here on campus that I thought everybody should know about. Coming up on Thursday, September 26th, there is the Board of Trustees meeting. And there's a couple of reasons to show up for that. Standing with the union is important. There is also going to be movement from the local chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine to adopt a resolution advocating a ceasefire. So that Board of Trustees meeting is going to be Thursday, September 26th at 12 p.m. Right here at the Student Center where I'm broadcasting out of. They are asking all WMU students and Kalamazoo community members to urge the Board of Trustees to adopt the ceasefire resolution drafted by the WMU Divestment Coalition. And I'll go ahead and read the statement. This is the resolution they are calling on the Western Michigan University Board of Trustees to implement in regards to a ceasefire in Gaza. Whereas Western Michigan University is committed to establishing learning environments that are physically, socially, and emotionally safe for all students, and to cultivate a climate in our schools and community that is welcoming and inclusive for all people, particularly Western Michigan University's Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, and Jewish students and faculty affected by the Israeli siege, and whereas the Israeli occupation has subjected Gaza to severe collective punishment and has resulted in the isolation of its population from crucial humanitarian aid. The United Nations Human Rights Council reports that 1.7 million Palestinians have been displaced internally, exacerbating a dire situation with limited access to clean water, food, fuel, electricity, and essential medical care. And whereas, as of June 19th, the ongoing siege has caused extensive damage to Gaza's civilian infrastructure, including universities and UN schools, and has led to the deaths of over 40,000 Palestinian lives, including over 5,000 students and over 300 teachers and university professors, as reported by the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. And whereas the siege on Gaza represents the most significant escalation in decades, with the potential for further escalation into a wider regional conflict with devastating consequences. I mean, just look at what's going on in Lebanon the last week, and we will be talking about that in a minute. Whereas the board recognizes the importance of educational institutions to acknowledge global events and their impact on students, faculties, and families, especially those from affected regions. And whereas the rise of hate speech, particularly Islamophobia and anti Arabism, and the discourse surrounding the Israeli occupation is contrary to the values of Western Michigan University. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Western Michigan University Board of Trustees expresses full support for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The board should call for an immediate, sustainable, and durable ceasefire aimed at protecting and preserving human lives, allowing for the delivery of humanitarian aid and ensuring the unobstructed provision of essential goods to the civilian population in Gaza in accordance with international humanitarian law. Condemns all forms of violence, hate speech, and discrimination. The board should firmly condemn all acts of violence targeting students, children, and innocent civilians, in addition to all forms of hate speech, including Islamophobia, anti Arabism, and anti Semitism. Encourages educational dialogue. The board should encourage educators within the Western Michigan University community to facilitate informed and respectful dialogue about the genocide, aiming to foster a deeper understanding among students and staff, and to combat misinformation and prejudice. I am particularly passionate about that last one. And reaffirms commitment to diversity and inclusion. The board should reaffirm its commitment to create an inclusive educational environment that respects and values diversity and that actively promotes peace, understanding, and mutual respect among all members of the school community, particularly students and faculty affected by the Israeli siege on Gaza. So again, that is Students for Justice in Palestine and the rest of the WMU Divestment Coalition kind of making a call for students who are interested. It is going to be the WMU Board of Trustees meeting on Thursday, September 26th. They are pushing for the Board of Trustees to pass that ceasefire resolution. That is going to be right here at the Student Center Ballroom at 12 p.m. And folks are encouraged to show up. You can make a public comment expressing support for the ceasefire. So again, we will link to all of that information in our show notes if you are interested. We're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to pivot to some issues going on here in the broader Kalamazoo community. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find that on most podcasting apps, as well as Facebook and YouTube. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello, everybody. We are back. This is Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR online at widerfm.org. I'm joined now by my co-host Lawrence. Lawrence, how you doing today?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
Oh, you know what? I'm not hearing you. Um,
Mic check. 1 2 1 2.
all right. Try speaking up again, sir. Is it
Hey, hello, hello, hello.
okay?
Mic check.
That's
1 2. What is this?
let's see. I don't.
I'm rapping on
All
this
right,
beat,
DJ devices.
getting this business all day, all night.
Oh,
We're saying words.
okay. I
All
plugged in the right
right.
cable, so you should we should hear you now.
We're constant professionals, folks. Constant professionals.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
doing it live.
yeah.
We're gonna do it live.
Yeah, doing it live. All right. Okay. So, all right. So we actually are live now. So we've got a lot we want to talk about, of course. There's
Can people
the
hear me? Can
yes,
people hear me? Okay,
yes,
cool.
we can hear
What
you
up? What
loud and
up?
clear
What up,
now.
beautiful people around the station, nation, world? What's up?
Yeah. So yeah, as we mentioned, we got a lot to dive into on the program, and I know we don't have you for too long, so I don't know there's a couple things we're talking about. I don't know what you wanted to start off with first, but I will let you take the baton and bring up the next topic.
Okay, so there's a lot to talk about. Uh, let's get let's knock out some national news, some wild news. We call ourselves media ciphers. So media ciphers, one of the main reasons was our other name for those who do not know about the dead name that we don't use anymore. Uh, the reason why we chose media ciphers is because me and Andy are hip hop heads. We're hip hop heads. Um, and so before anything said, rest in peace to Rich Homie Quan. He passed away. There's been a lot of people who have passed away from Frankie from Frankie Beverly and Maze. Uh, uh, Mufasa passed away. That hurt. That hurt. That hurt a lot. Not gonna lie. And the only reason why I'm bringing up
Oh,
or
by the way, I
segueing,
haven't watched it yet. Just to interrupt real quick, James Earl Jones once starred in a very like pro-union movie called Matewan, not spelled like down Michigan. It's Matewan. I'm still been meaning to watch it, but talk about like lefty politics and James Earl Jones. Thought that'd be a quick recommendation there.
yeah, yeah. And also we have to shout out James Earl Jones because he got his BA at University of Michigan. So you know, a voice of a generation. One of my favorite actors and people who I like watching growing up, man. But he passed away. Fat Man Scoop also passed away. Like there was a lot of people. I'm just like, it hurt my feelings. Like hurt my feelings. What hurt my feelings worse, or what also hurt my feelings, is seeing people who I used to listen to now go to jail for a number of things. And one of the people who I used to listen to growing up, I'm not gonna lie to you, was the owner of Bad Boy, P Diddy, Puff Daddy. He went by both different names, and he got indicted. Got indicted for a number of things. Um, for weapons, sex trafficking, and others. It's not looking good. It's not
Yeah,
looking good.
if you read through it, it's kind of if you took Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, and a little bit of Suge Knight and threw it all in a blender. This is a lot of the kind of stuff that we're hearing coming
Yeah.
out
And
right
I
now.
don't I don't know from what I've read, I don't know if it was underage women, but I definitely know that they were trafficking
Yeah,
prostitutes to
yeah,
go to these freak off parties
yeah.
that the AP and others have the
Correction, throw
AP
throw
and
a dash
others.
of Epstein in there also, but is that
Yeah,
this
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things where when power corrupts, right? We always talk about it. Power corrupts, and absolute power will corrupt absolutely. And it seems like this man did not. It amazes me when certain people are criminals, right? This man's a multi is a billionaire, literal billionaire. And like crime makes sense if you're poor, right? If you're hungry, you ain't got no money, a job ain't called you back, so you went and stole food because you're hungry. You're trying to survive. I get that crime. Like that crime's understandable. When you're a multi-billionaire, you're just doing crimes just for the kicks and giggles. Because there's no other reason. I don't understand. I truly don't understand. You're a multi-billionaire. Why why do you have guns that have serial numbers scratched off? Like why like you're a multi-billionaire and you're flying out sex workers. Like again, sex work is real work, and you're flying out sex workers to go do a number of wild things, but you're recording said sessions with other famous celebrities so that you can use it as blackmail. Why are you blackmailing other celebrities or other, not just other celebrities, but just other powerful? Why do you think you need to do that? Does your power and influence in the multinational companies that you own or are part of don't carry enough weight? Like you're only doing crimes just to be like, nah, I'm really living this rap life. And as we've discussed before, most artists, it doesn't matter if it's hip hop or otherwise, most artists aren't living what they're saying in their music. Because if they were living what they were saying in their music, most of them would be dead or in jail.
Yeah,
And this man was like, nah,
I'd
he
also
really
say
wanted to be a
like
part of that life.
P Diddy's in some pretty thick company as far as billionaires go. Is it like there's this pathology among a lot of people in like the ruling class who it's not enough to just have more money than God. It's to be able to move about as though you have the power to get away with anything. And you see that expressed differently in different billionaires. You have people like Elon Musk who says like, I'm going to buy this social media company. I'm going to turn it into a haven for right-wing trolls. You have Donald Trump, who's running for office with God knows how many charges and felonies, and who spent his whole life basically being a career criminal. Um, you have, again, fossil fuel executives who just broadly are it's like, let's destroy the planet so that we can get a bigger yacht. I think it's interesting with somebody like P Diddy where we see its expression a lot more in the media because it's like kind of through the lens of pop culture and music. But yeah, again, this kind of tendency expresses itself all the time in the most powerful people who they have enough money. They don't need to be getting in the trouble, but they do it regardless.
Yeah, you're doing it for the thrill. And if you have to do you know how bored of a human being you have to be to do the type of crimes that he's accused of? You know how bored you have to be? You're a multi-billionaire. Like Diddy's a billionaire. He could buy his own island. He could literally fund like he had enough money to put a serious dent in the homeless crisis that we have in America. Like he had enough money, like he had enough money, power, and influence to help the water crisis in Flint. You understand me?
Mhm.
And you chose to take your money to do all types of reckless stuff. So now a lot of the old things that were speculated to be tied to him is now being tied to him. You know, Kid Cudi's car getting blown up. Uh things with Diddy. I mean things with Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. Uh him being tied to Keefy D because maybe he gave Keefy D the money to do the hit on Tupac. Like there's a lot of speculation and stuff that's now being thrown on his name. And I saw his lawyer's interview on CNN, and his lawyer is doing the thing that I expected. The all of the people that's been around him for the last 15 to 20 years that saw and enabled a lot of this behavior is also will be getting thrown under the bus. Cassie is going to be getting thrown under the bus, even though she was also a victim. Like after the video came out of her of Diddy putting hands on her, now that's also being brought back up of who else did you do this to? Dawn from making the band and from Dirty Money when she was working with him is now also suing him for millions of dollars. Like there's a lot that we are going to see in the next few days. And even Shine, who went to jail for murder, is saying that Diddy forced him to do it. So like,
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, as the song goes, the more money we come across, the more problems we create, apparently.
the more
But
the more money you get, the more
yeah,
exactly.
uh,
But yeah, man, it's bad for your boy. It's bad for your boy right now. And thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But anyway, that wasn't the main news that I wanted to get to. Um, I don't like it's segments like these that when we talk about news and politics that grinds my gears. I know that we do have some people who are from all over the political spectrum, right, left, or whatever, that may not agree with us. I think maybe it was myself being naive that I thought as Americans we can all agree that we don't like Nazis, right?
you'd
We're
think.
we're
Yeah.
all we're,
I mean,
we're
these
all
last 8 years or
anti,
so have been a little eye-opening, but
right?
this is,
Like we should all agree that we are anti-Nazis, right? So reading the story from Mother Jones, shout out to Mother Jones, they're out there doing the Lord's work. Donald Trump campaigning in North Carolina, Mark Robinson wouldn't be appearing with him. Mark Robinson is running for uh, lieutenant governor of North Carolina. Mark Robinson is a black Republican in the state, and Mark Robinson, a number of years ago, decades ago, was on a adult film site, uh, and he has made multiple comments in the adult film site and throughout the years, saying very disgusting things. First of all, if you are the type of person to leave comments on a porn site, get help.
yeah.
And it's not that you should not leave comments. If you want to leave comments, then leave comments that are relevant to the thing that you are watching. Mark Robinson left comments that were not relevant to the thing that they were watching. They were relevant to his psychosis. Literally, this man literally called himself a black Nazi. Okay, we're just going to take black off for a second. Why do you want to be associated with Nazis? If you're an American, we fought an entire war against fascist ideology. Now, I understand that we support 73% of the world's dictator in modern times, but we're anti-Nazis. Even though there was an American Nazi Party in American history, that's a whole thing. But if you notice, the American Nazi Party never actually got power because their ideas are horrific. Why would this black man want to call himself a black Nazi? Why would this be okay? And also, to the Republican voters, especially in North Carolina, and just Republican voters in general, you're cool with the guy that associates with Nazis? I mean, obviously, you're cool with Donald Trump. He said that there were very fine people on both sides during Charlottesville, where Nazis ran over Americans, where a Nazi sympathizer ran over Americans and killed one. If Republicans, there has to be a realignment to sanity, that we cannot accept people who do not believe in our Constitution, that does not believe in our rule of law, who does not believe in the basic principles of America. And being a Nazi goes against those basic fundamental principles. Republicans are supposed to be about that tradition, the fundamental principles, right? That all people are all people should be treated equally, that you should have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All those things that they care about, like freedom and democracy. Nazis are against all of that. Why do you support this?
Well, a couple things that come to mind is just, it seems, and like this is a very extreme example, but particularly like the current MAGA movement or like far right movements, especially in the last 30 years, um, they they really like being able to find certain like tokenized candidates that it almost makes them feel like uh it's acceptable to be this reactionary because look at this like reactionary black person who we have put forward as a candidate. And of course, somebody describing themselves as a Nazi sounds really out there, but let's not forget, the long 20th century is still in many ways still going on. And the thing that popped my head almost immediately was if you recall back in 91, which is only about 30 years ago, 30 years and some change, David Duke ran on the Republican ticket for governor of Louisiana, who, if you do not know, he was a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, which is about as close to Nazism as one can get in the United States without being a
But
neo-Nazi.
Andy, did he praise Mein Kampf and say that it was a good read? Because Mark Robinson did that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I mean, it makes sense because Trump, Donald Trump, he also has said that he had Mein Kampf by his bedside. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that these nutcases all believe in the same thing, but these nutcases don't agree with America. If you
Yeah.
don't agree
And
with America, don't you think that maybe, now no, just maybe if you are an American voter, you shouldn't roll with those kind of people.
I mean, the thing is, though, and like going back to so that David Duke race in 91, he got 31% of the vote. And to a lot of these people, even going back to the Nazi Party of the 40s, like they cloaked a lot of the Nazi policies in Lebensraum and the history of U.S. colonialism and stuff. And let's be honest, as we know historically, Hitler and a lot of the Nazi Party took notes from us in the form of what we did to Native Americans and Jim Crow as to how to treat the Jewish diaspora over there. But I think there's a key point in like, there's kind of two Americas. There's America as most Americans wish it could be, live up to the standards and practices and its values. And it's America as it has actually functioned. And what a lot of these Nazis and Klan people are kind of gesture towards is like we want to preserve and build off the American empire as it has functioned, which is racial capitalism. So again, this guy running out of oh crap, what state? I'm sorry, what state is? I'm a brain fart.
He's running in North Carolina.
Yeah,
He's running to be lieutenant governor of
yeah.
North Carolina.
Okay, but yeah, so he's running to be lieutenant governor of North Carolina, and he's basically part of that tradition that speaks to this idea that America is like this bastion of quote unquote Western civilization. Colonization is okay. It's okay to be brutal and tribalistic, and again, it's also part of that long history of marginalized people, people of color, uh, certain members who have kind of been given that hall pass into the bourgeoisie, basically turning into these class and traders to not only the working class but also just like their own racial diaspora. um, and again, we see it a lot. Again, Nick Fuentes, one of the most high-profile neo-Nazis in recent memories, is again, as I think it was JD Vance maybe pointed this out. He's from Mexico. It's,
he was at Trump's house having dinner with him.
yeah, Enrique
Like
Tarrio is one of the leaders of the
so
Proud Boys.
so here's the thing. Here's the thing. There's been black Republicans. Yeah, right. Michael Steele was the former head of the RNC. The RNC was so racist that they didn't let him go to their national convention. That's a true story. Um, and the reason why is because he apologized for the Southern strategy. Excuse me. He apologized for the Southern strategy twice, and he was the head of the RNC. Right? You had Condoleezza Rice. Right? You had um, other right wingers that were black that talked about conservative values. I'll even put people like even right wingers who cater to black people, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, right? He's a right winger too, but he caters towards black people and black people idea and ideology in his rhetoric, right? But then you have these right wingers like Tim Scott that starts going further to the right, that's not believing in objective reality, that's establishment, but they are okay with tearing the system down as long as their authoritarian leader doesn't harm them. Though you have those special kind of cowards, right?
I want to
And then
segue
you
real
have
quick and bring up just another example from recent news. The mayor of Hamtramck, which is a suburb of Detroit, Amr Ghalib, just endorsed Donald Trump the other day, and that's the only city council in the country that's all Arab American. And if you recall, we actually ran a story about Hamtramck. Uh, I think either last year or earlier this year about how they, or no, it was around June because Pride stuff was coming up. They banned the Pride flag, and you're seeing them make an alliance with Donald Trump, Ghalib, um, over kind of similar conservative values and like anti-LGBTQ stuff, while at the same time, like this is probably the most like overt story I've seen recently of like endorsing the Leopards will eat your face party because again Ghalib talks about having solidarity with Palestinians and talks about why that's a big reason they're drifting away from Harris and all that. And again, that's an interesting phenomenon to bring up unto itself. But to go the other
that's
way
parallel.
and
That's
endorse
parallel.
Trump, who is a man who has literally said he would just basically give the Israeli state a license to kill. And again, he says like, "Well, not as many wars happened under Trump." It's like this man literally said he would give Netanyahu anything he wanted to kill your
Andy,
constituents' family members. But
Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Trump's mega donor Sheldon Adelson's wife, didn't she give him multiple millions of dollars because he annexed the West Bank? They wanted him to annex the West. They wanted him to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He did. They gave him money, and now they're giving Trump money so that Israel can annex the West Bank with Americans backing.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
again, if you're an Arab person and you're voting for Trump, uh, if you're a Muslim person or an Arab person, you're voting for Trump because you think Trump will be better on Israel Palestine. You have lost your mind. The same way that if you are a black person voting for Trump because Trump will do better for our community, you have also lost your mind. I want to remind y'all during Trump's administration, he stole money from the United Negro College Fund. He also stole money from wounded veterans, Meals Without Wheels. He also stole money from I forgot what the Jewish organization was, but it was a Holocaust museum organization that his foundation was supposed to give money to. He stole from them as well. So much so that they took him to court, and he had to admit on record that they stole money from these organizations. And that was in 2000, if I remember, 18. Trump stole money from Black organizations, Jewish organizations, wounded veterans organizations. And people who are starving, organizations that help people who are food insecure. And you think that he's going to help us? You think that tying yourself to that person who's okay with a person calling themselves a black Nazi is okay? Like, come on, y'all. Look, we can do better. America,
Yeah.
we can do
And I would just close that point by saying, like, whether we're talking about Lieutenant Governor or, Mayor of Hamtramck, I think one of the most insidious things that they're really doing is whether they know it or not, whether they genuinely believe what they believe or they're doing some sort of political calculation, they are feeding their own marginalized people basically into the lion's mouth. And that's not to say that, again, the Democratic Party, they're also capitalists and they also do a lot of harm to the working class in their own way. But, particularly at this period of time where, the Republican Party is embracing these proto-fascist politics, it's it's the difference between, inviting the fox in the henhouse uh endorsing the fox, saying, "Hey, you guys should trust this fox. He's gonna be great for the chicken coop. Just watch." That's
better. I have all right, I have a few more minutes before I have to get off. So Andy, what did you want to talk about next?
Well, I did want to see, like, so with your couple of minutes left, there's two big stories that I think we could talk about, and I'll let you choose, but I thought either we could talk about voter suppression or what is going on in Lebanon.
We can talk about both. I have enough
Okay.
time to talk about both.
All right.
Let's talk about the voter suppression story because that does affect us.
Yeah, yeah. So this has been kind of a bombshell. Well, not as, but there's two really big voter suppression stories that are going on. Um, One is talking about the Georgia State Election Board, which is now ordering that all of its ballots are to be counted by hand. And then we've also got Nebraska, which is trying to reverse a longstanding precedent where they actually did in Nebraska and Maine are one of the two states, one of few states that actually divvy up their electoral college votes in a more democratic manner. So the idea is, they break up their electoral votes by county as opposed to the whole state. So, for example, most of Nebraska is probably going to go for Trump, but Omaha, for example, might tilt towards Harris. So they are trying currently to um, push that in, excuse me, in Nebraska. At the same time, they are the folks in Georgia are trying to push through this rule that, again, most election integrity experts view as actually being harmful to actually being able to get an accurate count, and again will delay the counting process, which a lot of people who really have been paying attention to this understand is kind of it's going to be a way for the Trump administration to stall for time, particularly if it looks like election night is not going their way. Um, and let's not forget, Georgia was at the center of one of the um, you know, uh, big things out of 2020 where Trump put pressure on that state's attorney general to find some votes. So one thing that I just as a kind of a broad um, concern, we've also got, again, a lot of these election boards across the country and state attorneys general that are being kind of weaponized to take a more explicit role in the upcoming election. And it feels a lot like, especially you've seen a lot of the triumphalism among some of our liberal colleagues about, like, oh, Harris has got this. They've got this in the bag, et cetera, et cetera. While kind of forgetting that a lot of the Republican Party has spent the last 4 years laying the groundwork to try to attempt to subvert this upcoming election in a lot of really obvious ways. And I I think if people aren't paying attention to this, it's going to come as a real shock on election night when they start pulling out every particular bag of tricks that they have in order to now again this is going to be a close election. Harris might end up losing on their own. I think largely because of imperialism and stuff. But um, if Trump does lose, it is going to be an absolute mess because he is in a position, and the Republican Party is in a much better position this round to try to subvert um, the election results than they were in 2020.
I find it, yeah, I don't find it surprising that the Republicans are going to Republican. They are going to try to find a way to subvert the election integrity. We've read a number of times where one of the head, I forgot who it was, I think it was the Lewis Powell memo, who were talking about they want less voter turnout because less voter turnout means that they have a more likely chance of winning. They don't want everybody voting and gerrymandering and or having these states that would usually be divided in delegates now all go to one party or another, disenfranchises the other people in that state that didn't vote for that candidate. So yeah, does it make sense on a grand scheme of things? Yeah, it makes sense from a Republican standpoint if you know that your candidate's not popular and not going to win. Donald Trump is the second or the first or second most hated politician to ever run for president. And those people know that he can't win the popular vote and he can barely sneak by the electoral college vote. So they have to do these underhanded tactics so you can win. You only do this when you know you will lose in a legitimate election. You only do these tactics if you know you're going to lose. So if that's the case, then yes, we need to fight back legally. Legally, we need to fight back. Um, we need the people in those states, the states around them. We need to start outside the national attention needs to put more attention and more pressure on those politicians. We need the people to rise up in those states to say, no, you're not gonna cheat on one side, one party's side. You're not gonna cheat uh you're not going to cheat us because that's what you're cheating. You're not cheating Venezuela. You're not cheating Haiti. You know what I'm saying? We have those stories that we also have to talk about. No, you're cheating the American people.
Yeah, and I think it's important to like at least my opinion, and I've been very honest on the show. Like America does not we don't really have a lot of democracy. We get to choose between two selected capitalist candidates every 4 years, but the democracy we do have is important. I think as election integrity journalist Greg Palast once said, and that was always stuck with me. If voting didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to keep you from being able to do so. So, I think especially a couple things to think about, after the election. If it does look like the Harris campaign won and the Trump team is trying to steal it through whatever legal and illegal maneuvers they have, it's really going to be up to the base and it's going to be up to the people to keep pressure on the Democrats to not fold because it's happened before. Younger listeners may forget in the year 2000. Al Gore had a very good legal case that the election in Florida that he actually won, but they folded a couple months in after the Supreme Court case decision, and basically in the idea of like national unity, let's move past it,
Oh,
blah blah blah.
no.
Yeah.
When they actually did do the recount, Gore won. But
Mm-hmm.
because of the Supreme Court saying, we don't care about your recount, we don't care about states' rights and them doing the recount so that we could have some clarity, they gave the election to Bush. Now, yes, you are right that Gore at the time did not fight back because he wanted to have unity in the country. But no, Gore and you could not like Gore or like Gore. in my opinion, this is one of those times when he should have been like, no, this they did the recount. The state has a right to do the recount, and we need to be fair to the people. The Supreme Court overseeing it and saying or superseding it isn't fair to the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could definitely see us being in a similar situation this November. Now I would say I don't know, I warn about like, right-wing terrorism and I don't know, that's a little hazier. It doesn't seem like there's that much of a base as there was in 2020 for that kind of stuff.
Oh
I
no,
don't
no,
want
there
to
still
eat
is.
my words.
There still are
There
right
is.
wing nutcases.
And there could be a lot of random violence after the election. Um, that's something to think about too, is kind of that threats. Because again, historically, you look at the rollback of Reconstruction, and what we saw January 6th was basically like it was almost like that was a Civil War reenactment. That was a reenactment of the kinds of mob violence that rescinded the gains of Reconstruction. And it is still very likely we could see some violence like that, where we have reactionary violence aimed at particular institutions to try to kind of terrorize people into rolling over for a false Trump victory, and that is a big possibility. I don't really. It remains to be seen what Harris Wald's campaign would do when faced by those kinds of conditions, but again, it's ultimately any kind of people power pressure, etc. And I also want to like remark too, if things do get really hairy after the election, nobody's asking you to defend the victory of President Harris. I mean, she's again, that is still a representation of imperialism and capitalism, but keep in mind the kind of like fascist terrorists, like threepers, one percenters, not 1%, three percenters, Proud Boys, etc. They do not make that distinction between like a supporter of Harris and like a principled leftist who doesn't support either party. Like anybody to the left of Ronald Reagan to them is an enemy combatant, and in such a case, we need to have solidarity with our neighbors first and foremost, but also keep some pressure on Democrats not fold and just kind of feed us into Project 2025 and all the other ghoulish things that the full strength imperialist fascist party has in store for us versus just the regular model that we have with the Democrats. Lawrence, you still on
Hey,
the line? Yep.
sorry, I gotta go,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll let you another time, man.
All right, great. Thanks for hopping on, Lawrence. We still got a bit of the show to go, so stay tuned. I'm going to be hitting on a couple of international issues, then we're going to be spending most of next hour on some local stuff. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WITR or online at widerfm.org. Your source for political revolution. You can also find us online. You can find us online on YouTube, Facebook, or the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. Hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So I don't have a ton of time. We're going to spend a good chunk of today's the rest of the show going back to the archives of an important interview we did a couple years ago about Radiant Church. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, gosh, the big international story that happened last week. Israel's escalating with Lebanon. They have recently done, again, missile strikes, in addition to that ghastly phone/pager attack last week. I have a couple thoughts on it. And again, we're going to link to a couple of articles in the show notes. I put a lot of depth into this, but like, so those you don't know, the IDF slash the Israeli intelligence apparatus booby trapped thousands of pagers and phones and electronic devices in Lebanon. Uh, Thousands of people were injured, a few hundred were killed, including children and healthcare workers. uh, according to the IDF, was a targeted attack against Hezbollah. Um, and first of all, a couple things. So I don't know if y'all have heard the term man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. Well, this was one I had a hard time comprehending. When this story first dropped, I had to look at it and look at it again and then look at it one more time because this is like cartoonishly evil stuff, folks. This is like what a James Bond villain does. This would be if this was in a Hollywood movie, you would call it hokey to hide explosives in people's cell phones and pagers and blow them up in their face. And let's take a moment to talk about how the Western press has been covering this. It's been ghoulish. It's been claps and applause for Israel for being so clever that they could booby trap people's like personal devices. Oh, good for them. Yeah, I think the New York Times called it the unprecedented technical might of Israel that they could booby trap these people's devices. And let's talk a little bit about the whole Hezbollah thing. Every Western outlet has been framing this as an attack on a terrorist group. Attack on a terrorist group. Well, we're not children, so let me break down a couple facts for you. There is no way. Okay, one, all of this goes against international law. Even if every single pager went to a Hezbollah militant, that is still against international law because you're doing it not you're not it's not an active field of combat. And again, you're exploding these devices in civilian areas like supermarkets and grocery stores and people's homes around their families. That is a violation of international, it is a war crime. But let's break down the reality. Not everybody whose pager exploded was associated with Hezbollah. There were reports of medical professionals having their pagers explode. There are reports of children being murdered and mutilated because they got their hands on a pager. There is no way you can, if you put these in the supply chain, these explosives, you have no way to control whether or not it ends up in the hands of quote unquote the bad guys. Well, let's break that down a little bit too. Hezbollah is not just like, oh, spooky, spooky terrorist group. They're also a political party inside of Lebanon. They have seats in parliament. They have engaged in military aggression with Israel lately, but it's been in direct response to the genocide going on in Gaza. And they've said they will cease all aggressions once there is a ceasefire. So it is a direct response of solidarity to what the IDF is committing in Gaza, which is a genocide. And yet the Western media praises this as it's the most clever and cute thing in the world. I had a hard time comprehending like a government hiding explosives in your cell phones and pagers, but to turn around and see the Western media just talk about it as if it is just such a neat and cool thing that Israel did, when again, most of the rest of the world, including the United Nations, is calling it a war crime. It's hard. It's sometimes it's hard to get me really outraged and just sick of what the U.S. is doing with our tax dollars and how the U.S. media supports this stuff. But that's one thing that just hit me right in the gut. And by all measures, it looks like the situation is going to escalate. It may blow up into a full scale war any day now. And don't forget, the United States government could stop this anytime that they wanted to. They could pull the plug on U.S. arms shipments, and Israel would necessarily have to de-escalate. Now, if you were a child, somebody on the right says, well, then Israel won't be able to defend itself. Do you think these countries are going to go ahead and attack Israel when the U.S. is right behind them? Do you think they are going to escalate under those conditions? No. But we could tell Israel, you need to cut it out, or we're going to stop sending you weapons. And it wouldn't be blowing up into this regional conflict. And people wouldn't be getting starved to death in Gaza. And people wouldn't be getting have cell phones exploding in their face. And that's just a terrible precedent, people. That it is an act of terrorism. There's no other word to describe it. People in Lebanon are terrified to use their devices. All of you are walking around with cell phones. Imagine you put it to your ear and it blows up, and you're left mutilated or dead. I'll tell you one thing: as a leftist talk show host, I'm probably not going to be buying a new laptop anytime soon. Yeah, watch me like 5 years from now. I'm doing, man. I'm really critical of Israel. Maybe I'll get a cool eye patch out of it. Who knows? Anyway, it's gross. Um, with that, we will link to some stuff in the show notes. I wanted to comment briefly on the whole Teamsters non-endorsement thing. Um, and there's a really great article from In These Times that goes into it. But you may have heard the Teamsters refused to endorse either candidate, and um, there's a great article that kind of goes into how the head of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, may be one of those kind of like, kind of likes Donald Trump a little bit. Um, and I'm just going to read an excerpt. So just quick. So they didn't endorse. Some member polling showed that Biden was a candidate supported by most Teamsters over the summer, but that Trump had taken a lead after Harris entered the race. However, the methodology was kind of haphazard. One number came from town hall straw polls, another from electronic member poll, and a lot of members of the Teamsters Union said um, that they had never even gotten. While a lot of Teamsters locals have independently decided to endorse Harris. Um, Sean O'Brien, as we know, spoke at the Republican National Convention. He described Trump as a tough SOB. Um, he made a union donation of $45,000 to the RNC, along with a donation to Democrats. But um, as In These Times describes O'Brien, he's made himself a useful patsy for the false and dangerous attempt by the Republicans to brand themselves as some kind of working class party. And as I say in this article, the most plausible theory of the Teamsters' weird endorsement fiasco is this: the union's membership has a lot of Trump supporters, plus O'Brien himself is a bit of a macho esque type of guy who might think Trump is sort of cool. Plus, before Biden jumped out of the race, it looked like Trump was going to win. This combination of factors may have been enticing enough to convince O'Brien that he could pave the way for a plausible case to endorse Trump, which would then allow him to accrue power as the lone major union leader that Trump liked when he got back to the White House. O'Brien could then use his uniquely positive relationship with Trump to shield the Teamsters from the bad things the Republicans would do, make himself Labor's biggest political player at the same time. Let's count the flaws in this plan. First, Biden dropping out has reset the entire race, making the Democrats the betting favorite once again. But by the time that happened, O'Brien had already pissed off the Democrats so much with his RNC speech and general refusal to endorse that they froze him out of the DNC, instead putting a group of Teamsters members on stage to drive home the point that the Democrats saved their pensions. As soon as the Teamsters International announced they would not endorse anyone this week, Teamsters locals, councils, and caucuses across the nation began quickly announcing their own endorsements of the Harris-Walz ticket. Those endorsements piled up so fast that the Harris campaign was able to blast out their own press release saying that they add up to a total of 1 million Teamsters. Now O'Brien has pissed off the Democratic Party. He's pissed off the Harris campaign. He's pissed off the rest of the labor movement and his union allies. He has pissed off the most politically astute segment of his own membership. He looks weak since his own local staged a backlash against him. O'Brien's actions have led to an internal opposition campaign to his reelection. If the Democrats win, he will have to try to rebuild all of those bridges that he has burned. And the cherry on top, if the Republicans win, organized labor will be screwed anyway. Being Trump's buddy is not going to save us from the end of the NLRB and a return to pre New Deal hostility to all forms of union power. Again, big connection between a lot of our stories today. Don't endorse the leopard that will eat your face, because we've been seeing a lot of that. So we're going to be spending the rest of this hour pulling some from the archives, and there's really a very specific reason we're doing that. This is an interview I did back in 2022 with Casey Groton about some research he did into Radiant Church and how they were buying up properties downtown. that we are replaying this because Radiant Church, people affiliated with Radiant Church, owners of the Grazing Table bought up Use Guys hot dogs. Owners of the Grazing Table are affiliated with Radiant Church, and they're going to be replaced by um, Copper's Doghouse, which again is owned by the same people who have that affiliation with Radiant Church. So that's some important context going into this next story, talking about the way that Radiant Church had been and is continuing to gobble up much of the space downtown while avowing explicitly anti LGBTQ politics. So stay tuned for that. This is my interview with Casey Groton talking about that from back in May of 2022, which unfortunately, much of what we talk about is still super relevant to what is going on right now. Thank you all for tuning in. Keep it dialogue. There is more media ciphers on the way.